you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or get involved in the conversation on social media. Join the Pearl Jam Podcast community group on Facebook or follow us on Twitter at liveonfourlegspod.
Most popular band in the world.
And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Queen! Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper! You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast, and this is episode number 120. Alright, we did it. We got to another semi-milestone, I suppose. But if you've been tuning in for all 120 episodes, or maybe just one or two, welcome back. If you've never tuned into the show before, welcome. We are a podcast that talks primarily about Pearl Jam and their live catalog, so we'll go all over the map from their whole entire live history from years like today, 1993, the Versus era. Last week we did 1998. Before that, 2008. We've gone all over. We've done just about every year, pretty much every year to the date, and it's just been a fun ride for all of these episodes that we've been a part of. Let's talk more rock. Let's get into this. Randy Sobel over here, John Farrar over there.
Hello.
Hi. 1993, huh?
Love it.
This is more meaningful to you than it is to me because I was about 6 years old in 1993, so I wasn't really listening to Pearl Jam much at the time. So what's your, this era to you? What's this mean when we go back and touch up on this?
Yeah, 93, they were in flux. They were changing. You know, the 10 era was over and they were figuring out who they were going to be and who they were going to become. And you would get, I just remember the anticipation of getting oh, there's going to be a new album. Oh, there's this new song. You were just hungry for every little thing because here's this band that was different than everything that you'd heard before. They played a new song at the VMAs and that was a big deal. You get all these magazine covers and you look back on it now and obviously they hated that stuff we didn't know, but me being 15, it was yeah, I want to read everything. And I think the Cameron Crowe article had just come out before this in Rolling Stone. That was a big deal. I mean, you look at it from the fan perspective and you're yeah, give me everything. I want to know everything about it. But you kind of come to realize from their perspective, it was kind of tearing them apart. And this wasn't a great time for them. Yeah, they were trying to figure out how to maintain just what they had. And we can talk about that, the article, the reaction that they had when they found out that Versus had sold 1 million copies in 1 week. And yeah, it's just a strange time, but as far as all that stuff is peripheral to the music. They were just a time bomb on stage. They're just ferocious. And yeah, the show we're covering today is one of, we've covered one of these before. We did the Vault show. And yeah, we're gonna have to do all three of them because these are fantastic hometown shows. We're back in Seattle.
We are, yep, Seattle hometown series that we've been doing the whole entire year, and we've kind of been doing them chronologically. The last time we did Drop in the Park and we did Mural Amphitheater, so obviously now this is the most applicable to the shows that we can do because there was some Seattle shows before this. And there's one that we know some information of. There's one that we know almost no information of. And one, it happened in September of 1993 where they played at a club called the Rendezvous. And that was after a day show in Vancouver, and there's absolutely no information about that anywhere. That's just, it could be anything from a hearsay thing to, hey, we saw them play, or maybe it was just Ed and Stone, or not a full band situation. But it has been reported that they played there that day. Then there was a show on October 25th, right before Versus came out on the 26th. They played a secret show at the Off-Ramp, which is obviously only 300 people. We've talked about that before, such a small venue. And they've kept these hometown shows. It feels like they've wanted to keep a lot of, and we'll get into that in a second, and a lot of this show, what this show is, it kind of tailors the future for what Seattle shows would become in the next handful of years. But the 93 show that they did, Off-Ramp, it was only for secret fan club members or friends, and I guess it was just to get a couple of the Versus songs just kind of under their belt and get them played and get them loosened up and warmed up with it.
Yeah, that's a standard thing that bands do.
Yeah.
You play like a little show before you go on a big tour, kind of just get the nerves out, get the rust out, and get at it.
So you have to think, how many tours have they finished off in Seattle? So many. We can go through all of them if we had time. From anything from in 2006 when they finished off in the Gorge, I'm going to count that as Seattle and kind of being hometown. It's home state, so that's enough. 2013, I believe they ended at Key Arena. Oh, 2000, of course. You know, very big show. So this kind of has started a trend from going throughout the whole entire country or throughout the world, and then ending your last dates in Seattle and kind of making it a celebration of the hometown. There was a 3-show stretch here, as we mentioned, so it was kind of a celebration of that. There are things that happened at this show, and there's kind of this feel once they happen that the band just got deflated and they felt a sense of like, what the fuck is going on here? What are we doing? And they were having fun at first, and then the fun just kind of ended. It kind of stopped, and you see sort of a lack of interest coming from them. And that could just be what I took out of it. That might not be what everybody takes out of it.
Okay.
But there is a point where it gets to that. Two things that happen. And these are not things that have been talked about in sort of the historic lore of Pearl Jam. This is, I don't know when this video was posted, but this is a video that's been posted to YouTube in, the last handful of years probably. This was not really a boot that got circulated around, at least not in the era of Five Horizons, 2 Feet Thick, because there's no write-up about this. There's nothing from that era. Everything that we have is from the show that we have it now. So, yeah. So we'll get into that stuff. And look, maybe I'm proven wrong. Maybe I'm not. But I think there is something to this. So let's move forward. Let's move forward a little bit. The Versus tour, obviously, it's kind of wild at moments. And obviously, they're getting through the whole fame thing. Let's talk about that quote. You kind of mentioned it before. After a week that the album came out, they were told that they had 1 million copies sold. And their reaction really wasn't the same reaction that most bands would have if they sold 1 million copies in less than a week.
So this is from Tim Bierman. If everyone will turn to page 119 in their PJ20 books, you can read along. It says... Tim says, I was just starting to hang out with Jeff and the band. We were on our way to the show at the Warfield Theater in San Francisco. Eddie wasn't there, but everybody else was. They were stressed out already, and Kelly seemed kind of nervous. He told the guys they'd sold 1 million copies of Versus in the first week. I was expecting everybody to jump up and congratulate each other, but instead they just stared out into the street. I was really confused. I was thinking, all of a sudden they may be the biggest band in the world, and they're scared by it. It made me watch the show with a different perspective, and that's kind of when I really got it.
That's a handful to take in there. Like, obviously, we kind of know more now than we did back then. I think you alluded to that before. But, that kind of gets into their mindset of what, what they were prepared for. And I think there's a quote right after that one in the book that Jeff said, we were scared of this and we thought that this would gradually happen, and it just kind of sprung out on us.
And you mentioned it too. I think there's a quote from the last show, the one on the 9th, where I think at the end he says, Eklund says, "Oh, I guess we'll see you around town." And it's kind of like I think they were a little bit burned out, like from all the exposure, like we talked about that Time Magazine, Rolling Stone cover, VMAs, all that stuff going on. I think they were just looking forward to just going home and just living their lives for a little while.
Yeah. Also, like the feud that was going on with Nirvana, the quote unquote feud that was happening with the two bands that the media kind of had made almost something out of completely nothing. And there was supposed to be a New Year's show, and both bands were supposed to play. Ed got sick, and they backed out. Jeff and Stone showed up and played a little bit with Cypress Hill, but there was apparently some sort of interaction between Jeff and Courtney Love that was very uncomfortable for Jeff, where Courtney had asked him, aren't you supposed to be playing basketball or something? And that didn't really go well. But I'm not going to speculate on things. I won't speculate on whether they backed out for a reason. If he was sick, then he was sick. But like, I'm sure that they wanted nothing to do with that.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, we'll never know.
So that was really the era right there, and that's kind of everything that was going on with the band. Again, like dealing with fame is the theme, and we'll kind of hear it throughout this. A little bit of sarcasm and a little bit of, just kind of joking around about what was going on in the scene at the time will happen at this show. So let's get right into it. And the opener from the show is Go, and from the YouTube video, we kind of get into it halfway, but when you get into it, you're like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Like, it's already blasting in my ears. Like, from the jump, it's fast and furious. Think of this era, you don't think of Mike as the energetic one, but Mike is all over the place at this show. I was very pleasantly surprised with this. And then you get Jeff and Dave kind of jamming together at the end a little bit, and Dave is viciously fast on this song. Watching a lot of these guys, and mostly the camera was on Dave, so you kind of got Dave's perspective, which is great, but you want to see everybody else's perspective too. They seem to be in a good mood from the jump on this, and there is going to be a point where that's not the case as much anymore, but at least in the beginning, they were pretty on point with it and pretty happy to be back home.
And we've talked about shows that begin with release and how that kind of sets a mood for the show. You could say the same thing for shows that start with Go. Like that, there's a certain type of show that Go is an opener for, and this is one of those. But yeah, I mean, they look like feral dogs that have been let out of a cage. Yeah. Right.
They were ready for this one. They were excited to be back in their hometown. Most of these shows going from places in Texas and a lot of college places too. So yeah, most of these places and that's, gravitating, the college kids are gravitating towards this as well. I think they're happy to be back home. They're happy to play a place that they're comfortable in. And from the jump, they're definitely really excited to be there. And right after Go, Ed gets into the sarcasm right away. We're the most popular band in the world, he says, as they get into Animal. You know, that's what you got from him sometimes with this. And I feel like when he's in his best mood at this time, he's doing that sort of thing. And he's joking around with the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously going to poke fun at themselves. You know, they're not a band that's come out and be like, hey, did you guys read our cover story in Rolling Stone and Time Magazine? Yeah. Like, no, of course that's not what you're going to get. They're going to try to knock themselves down a notch or two. So, yeah, the most popular band in the world. Yeah, a little sarcasm behind it.
They never set out to be anything like that, and everything that happened was just happenstance. And it's funny because we did have some conversations on our Clubhouse conversation that we had last week, and most of them were about how popular they were back then and how that just didn't translate over time. And I think it was them that made sure it didn't translate, that they said, this is how we stay out of the spotlight. This is how we make it accessible to our people and not accessible to the entire world. And that's why when you think of 90s bands in a nutshell of, I guess, what the general population of music listeners, they don't put Pearl Jam in that kind of stratosphere, still staying around. You know, you think, okay, the Foo Fighters and Weezer and some of those other bands, that they've stuck around. A lot of people have just forgotten that Pearl Jam even exists, which is unfortunate, but that's more for us to love. So, all right, Animal and Why Go here. And really, it's the energy. Ed's voice is full. There's a lot of space on the stage. I don't know if you noticed that, but like there's a ton of room for all four of them, I should say, with Ed included, to just run around and kind of do their thing, shenanigans. And Ed is just kind of himself and exactly what you would expect from 1993.
Yeah, and Animal, Stone bouncing around like a madman. Mm-hmm. Ed like really stretches out that clone line and Why Go. That primal 1993 Ed scream, which you love to hear, and then, you know, Mike doing the solo behind the head, great solo, and Why Go. Yeah, it's like just ferocious first three here.
Right. Visceral voice, furious pace, like the songs are played. Good way to start this. And right after Ed gets back on the mic, and he kind of, there's a little bit more interaction than you'd expect. Almost every other song or every two songs or so, Ed is at least addressing the audience. So he mentions here, he says,
It's better than MTV.
Yeah, it's almost like he asked a question, like he was again just, oh, that was better than MTV, right? You guys, you'd rather go watch us on TV, maybe?
Right.
Little dig there. I like that.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, that's going to be intertwined in this the whole way through, we think. And mentions if this song is about you, I'm sorry. So, you know, from the jump you have Go Animal, Why Go, and Deep is kind of shifting the energy in a different way, but man, do you get that big scream in the beginning. What happened in this? Ed, he shoved a mic stand into the crowd, and he says, you almost took his head off, you fucking asshole. And I don't know who he's referring to. I don't know if he's referring to the security guard. I don't know if he's referring to another fan. I don't know if he's referring to a crowd surfer. This was really tough to kind of decipher here.
Yeah, if the camera guy hadn't been so in love with Dave A, we might have gotten a better view. But yeah, it's hard to tell. I gotta think he was either a security guard or a crowd surfer.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of goes to show you the and that's going to be a theme in this as we go along as well. The crowd is just unruly this whole entire time. There are people that are coming on stage and there's just a lot going on that's sort of almost really difficult to maintain and really kind of difficult to follow. And Ed and all of them are very safety first type people. And you would have to think at points they would be fearing for people in the crowd safety and maybe their own.
Yeah, I think, and Ed's always been like that. He's always been kind of the one, like, everybody knows from the PJ-20 movie, like the show where it changed and he was screaming right into that security guard after they were beating up that kid. He's always been kind of the one that's like, hey man, like, we're cool. Like, if you can be cool, you can do your thing.
Right.
But if you're gonna, like, when we talked about that show in, was it Singapore or the Philippines where he came on and got tackled during even flow in '95. Mm-hmm. Sometimes stuff like that happens, but he'll always like, hey, if you can be cool, you can do your thing, and they might fuck with you, but you're gonna if you can be cool, you can hang, but if you're not cool, then you got to go.
Right. Yeah. This version of Deep was great. Like how many times are we gonna say like an early version of Deep is exactly when you want to hear this song? Kind of in the same realm of when we did the Ann Arbor show, that kind of descent into madness that they do at the end. Dave is really taking this to have a moment for himself. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing at all. I think it's a moment for him to shine. But from other versions where it feels like the whole entire band is descending into that madness, Dave does take center stage with this.
Yeah, I mean, the drums are the driver behind that, and it's almost like the song is like kind of spiraling down or something. It's a really interesting way, and it'd be interesting to do it'd be interesting to do an Evolution episode on it and find out like when that stopped happening. And
we've been teasing that stuff a lot.
I know, but yeah, Deep is one, like it's not one of my favorite songs, but it's so much better live than on this, especially these, 91, 92, 93 versions.
Right. Jeremy follows Deep, and you're getting 3 straight 10 songs after starting with the first 2 off of verses, and it'll be kind of packaged together like that almost all the way through, where it's like, okay, here's some 10, here's some verses, here's some 10, and it's kind of going back and forth a little bit, which I thought was interesting. But this version of Jeremy, look, I thought the end was especially strong with Ed. Those he, like, it feels nonstop. It feels like he's doing that more than he's ever done that before. Like, he feels like he's having a moment. He's kind of in a trance here, and he won't stop that. Like, I thought that part in Jeremy was especially great.
You see Jeff just losing his shit. Like, he is just flailing around. It looked like he was gonna like either fall off the stage or like he's just in the moment completely, just throwing his bass around. Like, yeah, they were into it.
And did you see? I kind of was thinking that Ed was trying to puncture a hole in the stage at this point with the mic stand. I don't know if you noticed that. But it did look like a point where...
Wouldn't have been surprised at all.
Right, where he was slamming it down, and that usually doesn't come until the end of the set. This is 5 songs in, and already starting to do something like that. That's how you know that they're feeling a sort of way, and they're definitely feeling the energy of the crowd.
And like and to in contrast to like Mural and Drop in the Park, this is the MTV hit now. Like 1993 is prime Jeremy video. Like it just won the VMA. I'm kind of surprised that they played this, to be honest with you, this early in the set, but it definitely not a straight run through Jeremy, like not a by the numbers, going through the motions Jeremy. This is, like you said, that the ending gets really, really good, and you see them just going nuts at the end. Yeah, really, really good.
Yep. Another interaction with the crowd here.
Now you guys, you knew it was us playing, not Duran Duran, right? You didn't get mixed up. Is that a Duran Duran song?
I don't know what that's a reference to. Was there maybe that week something happened with Duran Duran on TV?
It might have been something at the MTV Awards. I think that was their like comeback. Was that like Ordinary World era? Duran Duran, they had just made a comeback, and
can't say I'm a Duran Duran historian.
Right. But I know they had made a comeback in the 90s with that song Ordinary World. That was a huge hit. And it might have been around this time. It could have been something from the VMAs or something he was referencing.
Right. But we also hear a little bit of noodling from Mike playing Sweet Home Alabama in the background of this, which was which is fun. But that kind of, again, goes to what I was saying before. Mike is definitely more approachable in this. He's not kind of sitting in his corner and playing. Right. He's definitely more looser being at home. The next package of songs, Glorify G and Daughter. And I thought to myself in this, I'm thinking, the stage setup and the way that things are in 1993, you would have to think that these songs would be packaged together just about every night that they do them on this tour, because you have to think Jeff is playing the upright.
Yeah.
I looked at the numbers on it. I got the numbers. In 93, back-to-back songs 34 times, and in 94, back-to-back songs 20 times. So anytime that you see Glorify G and Daughter in the set, they're usually going to be right after. And I think the only other song that they had on upright at the time was Indifference, and if that's happening at the end of sets, you don't really have to worry about something like that. So just an interesting little nugget to just kind of think about, and obviously this is out of album order here where you get Glorify G before Daughter, but just interesting little tidbits for you guys.
Yeah, it's kind of like we talk about with the Ed guitar sections. You kind of have to have the Jeff upright bass section. It's kind of a similar thing.
He was also playing very, very close to the edge of the stage. I thought that was because usually now we're so used to him kind of being in the background with it, but he was up kind of on Ed's level. That was a little kind of crazy.
Oh, he had to make room for Mike to run around behind him. Mike was running all over the stage on this.
Right, yeah. Another interaction, Ed comments in between and say, "Hey, look, it's Axl Rose." What is he referring to?
I think it's another VMA thing. Because wasn't that the one where Axl had the confrontation with Kurt, maybe?
Yeah, that was that had to have been 93, right?
I think so. He's just fucking with people.
Right.
He's just trolling. We call it trolling now.
Right,
he's just trolling. Right. He's just trolling people. Yeah.
Back then he was being a dick. Now he's being a troll. Right. Yeah, for sure. I thought this was a really good performance of Daughter, actually. I'd like to talk about that for a second. Cool little lick on the solo from Mike. Ed with really, really heavy vocals on the bridge, getting really high up there.
There's something that we kind of talk about in these early shows, that the song surges towards, like, you feel it kind of elevate and lift. And they can still do this now, but not quite as often as they did back then. But we've talked about it, like, in these moments, like if you go back to like Berlin '96, Red Mosquito, these kind of classic performances where you kind of feel them, and it might be Stone, it might be Ed, it might be Dave, it might be Jack, whoever's drumming, it might be Jeff, but at some point in the song, like, it pushes to another level. And the songs that do this are kind of the ones that become the best live songs. Like Porch, they definitely do this all the time. Black does this. Even Flow can do this. If you go back to the newer songs, like something like a Lightning Bolt can do this. Like the way they do with Corduroy now can do this. Do the Evolution can do this. Given to Fly.
Present tense.
Absolutely. And like there's a moment in the song when it's just from like the way they play together. They've been playing together so often, they know each other, and the synergy or like the connection that they have as a band, where they can kind of become greater than the sum of their parts. And like I noticed it in Daughter, like kind of right before you get to the tag where you feel the song kind of like push, and those are the moments that you get to something special. And yeah, this was really, really good. And the tags, like some interesting tags that we don't normally get to talk about, I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, David Bowie, we get a little golden years here. It sounded really good. And this was a tag that they've only done twice in their history, so like you said, very rare.
You say life's taking you nowhere. Last night they loved you, opening doors and pulling some strings. Wish upon day, I believe, oh Lord, I believe all the way. Nothing's gonna change the world.
Does a couple lines of Across the Universe, Nothing's Gonna Change My World for a line or two. The Bowie part's the standout, though. I thought that was really, really good.
I like both of them. I think the Bowie thing is nice, but when he crosses over into, like, no pun intended, into Across the Universe, I think, it sounds really, really good. And that line is the one, because, Golden Years is not like a famous Bowie song. It's not Ziggy Stardust. It's not Starman. It's not like one of his hits. Mm-hmm. But then that line from Across the Universe hits, and you're like, oh, like everybody knows that line. So it kind of like hammers it home a little bit. I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah, no, great performance all overall, and I agree with you on that build up that Daughter had in there. Absolutely, I don't think you quite get that in current versions of Daughter. I think you were alluding to that before, but definitely at this time, this was a song that they were feeling, and it was a song that kind of got the energy of the crowd up, and it kind of shot up after that, for sure. Totally agree with you 100%. Ed shares a little bit of what he's drinking here.
You know what, I'll let you guys in on a secret because it's home and everything, I'll let you know a secret. It's just water. It's just water. It's been water this whole time.
Do you think he's kept that little secret and he's kept that up, all that wine that he's been drinking on stage, allegedly drinking? Has it been water the whole entire time? Has he not performed a miracle?
Oh, I think he's a fucking liar. No, he can't be trusted at this point. He's just fucking with anyone. That's all you can do at that point. That's when you're surrounded by all of this, like, bullshit, for lack of a better word, all this other stuff that they're dealing with. You just start to fuck with people. Like, that's just what they did. We just had the anniversary of the Megan Jasper Sub Pop thing, where someone from the New York Times or something called Sub Pop and was like, hey, give us the grunge lingo, and she just started making stuff up and they printed it. Like, that's what this was.
Hey, you know what? But if you're gonna do it, be an artist and put an art to it, and that's exactly like, that's something that has never changed. He's always done a good job of just fucking around with the crowd and making jokes, and this one definitely gets a good laugh out of them and gets you into two hits right away. Even Flow, State of Love and Trust, screeching Mike solo off of Even Flow, very short but very electric. And Ed sings something before going back into the chorus. Him and Jeff are playing off each other a little bit. I really couldn't tell what he was doing, but it was improving just a little something, I would assume. Unless that's a deep Fugazi cut that I'm not aware of.
Yeah, I couldn't tell what it was. It just sounded like an improv. But yeah, during Even Flow, you get a moment like the camera finally pans out to the crowd. And like you mentioned, this crowd is just going nuts. Like they look like a wave about to crash. Like everyone is bouncing up and down. It looked really, really, like, I'm at a loss for words as to, like, to describe it, but it must have been super intense to be there. And And you mentioned Jeff and Ed playing off each other's stones, doing a little shuffle, really like he's doing his stone thing. But yeah, even flow, great, love it.
The way that I saw the crowd, it looked like it was not a big venue at all. It
Right.
looked like we were
Yeah.
able to see the back of the crowd. It looks like that there was an end to it, but it also looked like that there were about 10,000 heads that were all in that one camera shot.
Oh, they were packed in, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the crowd at the time, and look, to be playing in front of that kind of crowd in front of your hometown, something unique, something special, and definitely worked for this. Another in between, just kind of interaction here. Stone introduces Smitty. Smitty, I believe, is now their tour manager.
We're going to have to keep track of how many times we mentioned him. We mentioned him a couple of weeks ago, too, right?
We did, I believe so. Yeah. So, yep,
yeah.
Smitty, and it's fun to see that Smitty has been a part of this for so long, and now he's in Kelly Curtis's role, and like the band just always kind of promotes from within, and always does right by the people that have stuck with them for a long time.
I mean, it's like a family, yeah.
It absolutely is, and they've said that too. And everybody that you talk to that surrounds himself with the band have all said that sort of thing. Mike is playing a little bit of Stone's Angie in the background of that, so that was kind of cool. And Ed calls Smitty Sealboy. Don't know what that's about, but
That's got to be some deep reference that we're never going to get.
Yep, and I'm sure Ed probably, if you brought that up to him now, he'd probably be like, oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Now I remember that. He probably does not call him Sealboy anymore. State of Love and Trust, fast version, rips right through. Last week was slow. This is at a murderous pace. I think this is what we're more familiar with when we hear State of Love and Trust, but there's a major difference between the way that Dave is going to play the song and the way that Jack is going to play the song. Following that little section, we get Black. So this is, again, going back to where the verses packages are and the 10 packages. Glorified G and Daughter, Even Flow, State of Love and Trust. That being a 92 song, I consider that is being part of more of the 10-centric songs than the versus-centric songs.
Absolutely.
Black, and then Alive, and then you kind of get forward and you get a couple more versus songs going forward. So that's interesting. And there's also like 4 versus songs and you're at this part in the set, like they're not playing a lot of the new stuff, but they also know they have 2 more nights there.
That you just hit the nail on the head. Yeah, absolutely. They know they've got time and they've got room. Like the first night of these, we always talk about how the last night is the special one, and that's where they break out the crazy stuff. But the first night is, you're keeping it pretty tight to the vest, and you're keeping it pretty standard. Yeah, they're not going to do anything crazy on night one because they're going to keep some stuff in their back pocket.
Yep, absolutely. So Black is right here, and I don't know if you noticed this, but I've always loved Jeff's little bass slide that always goes into the first verse.
Yep.
He does it in the second verse on this too, and you don't really hear that.
Yeah, you could really hear Jeff on this. He was the highlight on this version of Black for me. It sounded really, really good. I love hearing all, like you said, the little slides. And even during the solo, he's doing some really interesting stuff. It sounded great.
Yeah, very furious sounding We Belong Together tag that finishes the song off. It's almost abrupt. There wasn't anything too extra. Stayed pretty concise. We kind of talked about that last week where it hadn't grown to that extended version where the crowd gets to sing along with them yet. They find a time to do the solo and then kind of quick end get out of it. But also, We Belong Together tags are like an every other night kind of thing. So to get that is the extra element that you do want from Black at this time.
It kind of felt like he wanted to do more and it was like it just the band just wasn't, they weren't in sync for that moment. Like
Right.
they didn't have that like recognition of like, oh, let's keep on this. And that's something, you know, you think like, yeah, you're gonna go in rehearsals like, hey guys, like if you hear me do this, then keep it going, you know, because I can get on a roll with this thing. And yeah, it's just one of those moments that changes the song, and one of the like one of the parts in its evolution.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and if we did a Black Evolution episode, it would probably need three full episodes to do, because there's so much that we can talk about with that, and so much that has gone into the song with well over 500 versions, probably almost 600 versions at this point, that you can really get deep down and figure out how they have changed this song as time went on.
Stay tuned for the 12-part Evolution episode on Black coming in 2022.
Good God, no thanks. I'll bow out for that. That's the line. All right, so Alive is following off Black here, and I think we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Ann Arbor show, we get the line again.
Yep.
Yes, I'm down, she said. Of course, sir, you fucking bitch. You're still alive, she said.
It's cringeworthy to hear, but it's also, at the time, it's going to get the crowd riled up, and nobody's really thinking about the misogynistic layers in that.
Yep, didn't like it.
Yeah, but you know what? There was really energetic version. Dave was really good on this. Mike was really good on this. Ed had some nonstop chanting, and the crowd was really fired up. And like I said, this is ending your 10 section right here. Your 4 your biggest songs from this era are all in a row, and you're kind of like, what's going to be saved for later?
Right? Yeah, that's another good point, because the songs that finish out the set here, like, these are all the showstoppers. Like, they really didn't have anything left.
Right, yeah, where they had to go to a song like Garden in their encore, you know?
Yeah.
That usually doesn't happen, so. All right, Blood is right here. Again, like, these are the shows, like you said, showstoppers. Blood being at this point in the set. Blood is awesome. Like, Blood is always going to be awesome from this time. It's the big angry vocals from Ed. Mike is rolling around on the ground. It looked like he was, like, pretending to have a seizure or something like that. What was that?
Doing some AC/DC there a little bit.
Yeah, but, I mean, look, Blood is always going to be the one that stands out from the 1993 era. It's a song that, if it sticks around nowadays and they play it nowadays, it's not going to have that force behind it, but back then, this was the one that Ed waited for. You know, even if he wasn't waiting the whole entire show, he was ready for this one when it got to it.
Oh, especially, like you said, especially coming off of the Rolling Stone cover and the Time cover, this song had a little bit of extra bite behind it.
Right. Yep. And then we get a little bit of an improv right here.
Touch me there. Touch me. Touch me, but don't touch me there.
This improv has gone down in their lore as, obviously, you listen to the chorus, it's called Don't Touch Me There. And a lot of times in 93, they were doing these kind of improvs, and they had, you know, when you think of, like, Fuck Me in the Brain, like, they all kind of had names where you can attach them to what they were. I think there was one in San Diego from '93 too that was pretty notable. I don't quite remember which one it was, but yeah, like the idea of this song, it's, you know, I don't know if he's singing from a woman's perspective, or I don't know if he's singing from a child's perspective, because you can see this as being sort of a sexual assault situation, or maybe this is reaction to pedophilia.
Oh, it gets X-rated. I want to think it's probably from the female perspective, but it could be either one. It could be either one. We don't know. We can just speculate, but it almost reminded me. It sounded a little bit, it's probably not direct, but it almost sounded had kind of an immortality feel to it. What'd you think?
Huh? I didn't get that. I didn't get
just in the sense of the way that it kind of like moved along, like the kind of the pace and the mood of it, like the way, not that the guitar riff is the same, but kind of had that same kind of like vibe and mood that Immortality has.
Right. It was wavy. It kind of,
yeah.
It was right. Yeah.
A little dark.
A little dark. I mean, that's for sure. If you're dealing with the subject matter, it's gonna be dark. I'm gonna have to listen to that again. I'm gonna have to listen to that again and see if I can pick up on that, because I didn't make that attachment. I didn't. So you might be onto something.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I'm not saying this was like an early version of Immortality. Don't get me wrong, but just in the sense of like that was maybe kind of where they were at with terms of like, you know, they're in the process of writing a new album, and you know, that's maybe just kind of the mood that they were in. It was kind of a teaser for kind of the attitude and the vibe of the new songs, maybe.
I don't disagree with you at all. All right, this is a moment from this show. This is kind of going back to making fun of what the whole scene has become, making fun of what Seattle in general has become, and what the rest of the country thinks of Seattle. So Ed mentions here, he says, "We're glad you could all make it. Hope it wasn't too big a deal to get in and just listen to music. I don't know about you, but we're up here and we've been thinking about life a lot lately." Then there's a fan that randomly just walks up onto the stage very casually. I don't know who invites him. Okay, it's my turn. I'm going to come on stage now. It doesn't like give him a single signal. He doesn't point to anybody in the crowd. The fan just walks up. And Ed puts his arm around him and he says,
This guy, see, jumped up, he wanted to tell me how he's been thinking about life. So when you think about life, what do you think about? It sucks, man. See? Government bullshit. That sums it up. Life sucks.
It's the government! It's the
bullshit.
government! Oh, no! I hate everything. I'm punk rock, right? Okay.
the most typical Generation X 1993 college or high school kid that you can think of. They jam a little bit while this moron is on stage and making a fool out of himself. And like the kind of jam that they do kind of sounded a little bit like the Bonanza theme. That's what I was thinking of that.
A little bit of Rawhide, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, they play dress up with him. Ed puts a corduroy jacket on him, and they give him his hat. And Stone
Grunge
says,
guy.
You look like
Grunge guy.
Right. And then you hear somebody say, throw a shoe at it. That's a direct reference to Indio. That has been passed around and obviously been reported on, and that was just over a month before this happened. And that's going to come into play in just a second. Hang on to that thought. So they send the guy diving into the crowd and back into the world to go worry about government bullshit and sex and whatever he did at that time. So he's gone. Right when he dives into the crowd, they go 1, 2, 3, 4. Perfect transition into Porch. And that was just a lot of fun. That was a fun moment. They don't usually have those kind of interactions. When you think of those interactions nowadays, every now and again they'll shave somebody's dreads or something like that, but it doesn't usually happen.
Yeah, usually those people are escorted off very quickly.
Right. This is a different time though. They were feeling good. They were in a good moment. They were in their hometown again. That's where this leads to. But at least from my perspective, here's where things start to change a little bit. So the bridge, they get a little bit of strobe light going off. This is the first time you really feel like a different lighting effect. I don't know if you got that at all from this, but I didn't really notice anything from, the lighting show aspect. Right. But Ed is screaming something into the mic. That whole part where this is going on, it's a blistering speed, lasts for about 2 minutes, and that part is fantastic. Just kind of taking whatever energy they were working off of, and they were feeding off of it, and that felt like it lasted for about 2 minutes or so.
Yeah, I think there's almost a little drum solo in there.
Yeah, they get to kind of all different levels with that. It's good, and here's where my concern comes in. So they're about to break back into the song, and Ed is kind of doing a little bit. He's singing something into the mic, just whatever he does to kind of get himself back in the porch, and he gets directly in the face. It's either a shoe, it's a water bottle, whatever it is, it smacks him dead on pretty hard. You hear it. I'm going to let you listen to it right here because you audibly hear it. So whatever that was pretty thick, that was pretty heavy. It doesn't really react to it like the rest of the crowd does. The rest of the crowd, there's kind of a collective like, oh my God, what the hell just happened? And Ed just kind of continues to do his little chants. He's saying something along the lines of, I love you, like there's not really a react. He's acting like it doesn't exist.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you do? Because, if you react to it, then you've let the crowd win, right? Yeah, he's not going to let them do that.
Right, but that's kind of, in a way, different from, the shoeless situation that happened where he was yelling at the crowd and then, did the whole thing and turned it into something good.
Drinking from the shoe and all that, yeah.
Exactly. So here, and maybe it's different because during Indio, maybe it was because that wasn't in the middle of a song and that was kind of in between things, sort of.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But anyway, they finish off the song. They hold off for the perfect moment, and Ed screams back into the mic, and it's a showstopper. So many great little moments come from the actual song itself. Mike is running around shirtless. It looks like Mike crowd surfs. I couldn't tell. I was pretty sure that was Mike, but I also wasn't sure if another fan snuck onto the stage and got out there. But Mike is definitely having a night.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And yeah, it's VHS quality. You can't be 100% sure who it was. So yeah, we don't know. But oh yeah, he's all over the place on this.
Right. So all right, that takes us into the encore, and we're gonna get into that. we're going to get into that in just a second. Let's pause for station identification and talk to you a little bit about what we're doing over at Patreon. We got some stuff going on. Last week we released our Horizon Leg profile episode with Deborah McMurtry. That's really good. And very soon we're going to end up getting to it. We're going to get to our present tense evolution episode. Yep. So we're going to keep putting that out there. And you know what? I'll give you the horn here. Just let everybody know what's going on Patreon, how they can help the show, and what tiers there are that they can join if they wish to.
Yeah, you can go to patreon.com/live on four legs, or the easiest way to do is just get the Patreon app, search for Live on Four Legs, and we show up right there. And it lets you track everything. You know, we have 3 different ways you can contribute to the show. If you just want to donate $1 a month, you get access to all the extra bonus content that we do. You know, we kind of reference these evolution episodes and things during the show, that those are available for you on Patreon. We do our Bridge School series that we're kind of going to be wrapping up here in the next few months over there. We've got the setlist drafts, Devo episodes,
91 shows too. Let's get some more 91. Absolutely.
Yep, those little short set lists, 7-8 songs from 1991 that it might not justify a full episode and like a full hour and a half, but we can knock those out on Patreon for people. And yeah, so for $1 a month, you get access to all of that. You become a bonus leg. For $5 a month, the Giga Leg tier, you can actually suggest a show for us to cover. If there's a show that maybe you've been to that you feel hasn't gotten enough attention, or if there's just your favorite bootleg that you want us to talk about, you can that's the tier for you. You'd be able to request a show, come on the show. And then we have our Horizon Leg tier for the people that are interested in supporting the Concertpedia project that we're doing. That's there for $10 a month. You get access to everything, and those are the people like Deb came on and got her own profile episode. You can come on and get one of those, and yeah, it's just a lot of fun. We thank all our patrons from $1 to $10 to anything in between. We're just beyond grateful for everyone who chooses to contribute to the show. It means a lot.
And a big shout out to our newest patron, Claire O'Leary, who has joined in the past week. We thank Claire.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah.
And a shout out goes out to Molly Clayton, who we just kind of got introduced to. And she's been one of our patrons for about a month or so, and she sent us a nice message saying she was really enjoying the content over there. So thank you so much, Molly, and thanks for being a part of this. And if you're having trouble, if you're on Patreon, if you're having trouble with accessing episodes right now, please get in contact with us. It's been an issue, but there have been people that have had some issues. So if you want to continue to listen to the episodes, just reach out to us and we'll help you with it. We'll get you in the right direction. A little self-promotion from me here. When this comes out, it'll already have had debuted, but I am part of the Wishlist series on Sirius XM Radio, and I was very excited to do that. So I believe if you're listening to this on Wednesday, I believe that on Thursday it's going to be airing again at 11 a.m. Eastern Time and Sunday at noon Eastern Time. So if you want to check it out, please do. It's different from what we've done on the regular show. I make it a little bit more personal, and that's something that we haven't gotten into in a while because we covered a lot of the really personal stuff very early on. So I get a little bit into some of the personal performances that really stuck out to me over the course of my show going, and it was just really fun to do. And I have to give a big shout out to Pearl Jam Radio here because they were nice enough to let me give a plug for the podcast to us. Is that was very cool. So we thank them for that. And if you want to check it out, please do. Hopefully we can get a recording of that and maybe post it to Patreon at some point. So that should be cool. Is there anything else that we'd like to promote? Is there anything else that's going on?
I think we're pushing for 100 patrons, right? We got something special going on if we get to 100.
Yeah, and we had a little bit of a setback. Sometimes at the beginning of the month, you kind of lose some patrons because of credit card issues and stuff like that. So it's been fluctuating a little bit, but let's say we're about 15 away from our goal. and our goal being 100. And once we hit 100, and this is a sell for Patreon, you guys, once we hit 100, we will throw a massive party at the size of the Christmas party that we did, and maybe we'll have some special stuff that we can do, and we can bring on some more special guests to this party as well. But that's all up to you guys. That's if you want it. And I'm not putting a cap date on it, but I'm just letting you guys know I got an infant that's coming in July. I would love for it to happen before July. Just a hint. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But, if it happens before July, the better.
Yep, at patreon.com/live on 4 legs. That's the number 4. Or go to that Patreon app and search for it.
Yep. So, all right, cool. Let's hop back into the show, which, this is so wasn't on anybody's radar at all, that if you go to Five Horizons and do the read up on it, it doesn't even have the encore separated for this. It didn't have the encore separated on Live Footsteps either. That wasn't one
stat tracker too. Yeah.
Yeah. It just straight through has 18, 19 songs, whatever it is. So, if our contribution to those sites could be to, slip in where the encores are. Yeah, sure. Great. So this is the one song that Ed's playing on guitar at this point, and obviously there's going to be another song that follows right up. So like we were talking about before, the glorified G and daughter back to back is where Jeff is going to play his upright. This is where Ed's going to have his guitar out. And this is where things get a little insane. And just like where Ed gets hit in the face, a crowd member makes his way onto the stage and just somersaults into the crowd. And it causes the band to stop before they really got into the song. No, there was a sense of uncomfortable. It didn't feel like afterwards. They just kept quiet for a while, and the energy that they had from the beginning of the show did not transfer at this point. It seemed like they were just like, okay, fuck it, let's just get through this. That's how I saw it.
I thought they kind of made the best of it. It kind of turns into that kind of Spinal Tap jazz odyssey thing that they do. It almost like a little bit of that free jazz that they did in 2003. And then they restart and it's fine.
Yeah, but that's what after that, once they get into the actual songs, it feels like they don't have that juice. You're not getting Mike running around in circles. You're not getting Jeff going back and forth. You're not getting a lot of vicious screaming points from Ed. The only one that's staying energetic really is Dave.
Yeah, and I think it was kind of the encore is kind of a little moody, which is weird after the main set that you just went through. And you mentioned too, you mentioned, this is kind of the Ed guitar section. There was no Ed guitar section in the main set. None of those versus songs that he plays on made it in there. And that was a little bit weird, but yeah, I think it's just a function of the set list. Like they used all their showstopper songs, all those energetic songs up.
You think it's that instead of the fan running onto the stage and jumping back into the crowd? I felt they were. I don't know if they were shaken up after that. It just didn't feel the same. I think that's such a
commonplace occurrence. I don't think that would throw them like that.
But they stopped they stopped the song. It took them a while to get back into it like that. It didn't feel normal for them. It didn't feel that. From Ed getting hit in the face before in Porch, I think it just kind of all unraveled. And at that point, they were just like, okay, let's play. Let's get through this night.
Okay.
Maybe that's just me. It didn't seem like they brought the same energy into the encore.
I mean, if you were there, send us an email, liveon4legspodcast@gmail.com, because we would love to know what you thought.
Of course, yeah, for sure. But I don't think anybody from that era is going to notice something like that. I think they're going to be like, they rocked the whole way through. I think it's one of those things where you kind of watch it and see how everything unraveled from a different perspective, and that's where you get that. I don't know if anybody's going to sense that coming from the crowd, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it's hard to tell. Like we're judging this based on a VHS recording from nearly 30 years ago. Like, yeah, I mean, we just don't know. But yeah, but you could be right.
And that's a situation where the person that's going to know that is going to be somebody that's not going to answer something that specific.
True.
So it's all speculation. It goes back to just how are we going to speculate this and kind of what we took from it. So it's what I took, and, they get back into the song and it kind of, Rearview Mirror finishes good. It sounds fine. Finally the shades are raised. Like, that was a good little part in that. But also, like, it doesn't quite match what they did in the main set. It's fine, but there was a lot more consistency. There was a lot more energy coming from that. So Mike, after this, mentions, he says, hey, there's Alan Hale, and we've been lost on a cruise for so long, and he's the skipper. What the fuck is Mike talking about?
Gilligan's Island, man.
I know what he's talking, but why is he even saying that? Why is he bringing it up?
I don't know. Yeah, it's a weird reference to make after all the stuff that's been said, and it doesn't really land. I think there was a collective like, huh?
Right.
From the crowd. Yeah, it was a strange moment.
All right, Ed keeps the guitar out, and they play one of the earliest Vitalogy songs that got intertwined in a live set, and I believe they recorded a demo for this in the Versus sessions, right? Like, this was...
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, and this was used at the Slim show, so this was very early on one of the songs that they were highly considering for the album, but obviously made Vitalogy, and Whipping is the song, and 18 times they played it up until this point. So they're favoring it, and they're bringing it out, and it's kind of one of those, they have very few fan service kind of songs at this point, so you have to think that this is one that obviously the crowd's not going to know, but when it comes to a later date, those fans that are still fans to this date can say, like, I saw Whipping before Vitalogy even came out. It's still kind of, it's still got some significance to it. And most of the energy, again, is coming from Dave, and the rest of the band seems fine, but it was, I think, maybe if it were a little bit earlier in the night, it would have had that more fast, vicious, everybody running on the stage, and it just kind of felt, kind of felt stable.
Yeah, I thought it picked up at the end, but yeah, I tend to agree.
So, yeah, early version, I don't think this is a good version of Whipping to look into the early versions in 93 and say, like, this is how this song is transformed. I think this is a completely different scenario. There are other versions that I would love to go back and listen to the song and really see what they were doing on it and how it developed. I don't think this is a good example of that.
And again, it's placed weirdly. In the version that we all heard was Atlanta a few months later, where it's really early.
This is the second song in the set, right? Second or third.
Third, yeah. And that is, I think that, you can make the argument that this set list is not one of Ed's best constructions. Like we talked about, you wasted all your showstopper songs in the main set, so they don't have anything really to go to here. Rearview Mirror hadn't really become that yet. So yeah, there's an argument to be made that, like, what are you gonna play? And considering they've still got 2 nights left, they're still saving some special things for the next 2 nights. It's almost like this was kind of an afterthought encore construction, maybe.
Right. I don't think, I would assume that they probably had Rearview Mirror and Whipping picked out. I don't know if Garden, they probably were like, okay, what's one that we haven't played in this show yet? Okay,
right.
We haven't played Garden yet. Let's use it. It doesn't feel like, your encore type song. It's and again, I think we brought up in '92 they were playing very heavier versions of Garden, where Mike was getting more of a moment to kind of finger tap and be more like Eddie Van Halen. This was more the subdued and kind of the building versions of Garden that really get you there when that last chorus kind of ramps up, and it didn't have that same headbanging vibe to it. It's fine. It's very good. It's actually very good. But in the encore, I think it wasn't this. If it was played mid-set, kind of after maybe one of the verses sections, after a daughter or something like that, it would have hit a little bit better. But, at least you get in this, like Ed, Jeff, and Stone all kind of huddling together, and you get a nice little verse at the end. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and Mike at the end, again, just going nuts. He kind of recaptures some of that early set feeling. I thought it was cool. I didn't mind Garden here. We can, like I said, you can talk about the construction, and maybe Garden's definitely not one of those showstopper songs that you expect late in a set like this, but I didn't think it was bad.
Yeah, no, it wasn't bad at all. I just don't think, to go from Whipping to Garden to Leash to end your show is not. I don't think those three songs have ever been played in that order before or after. Like, that's a very weird way to kind of construct it. So Ed talks to Keith here, who is the lighting guy, and he wants to see the faces of the crowd. He asks them, how did we sound tonight? And says, it's nice to know that we're going to sleep in our own beds, but before I go home, I'm going to go to the Vogue and watch a band called Zeke. That kind of goes back to, like, Ed just not giving a fuck about that kind of thing. And, he wants his privacy, but he's also doing shit like Self-Pollution Radio, giving out his phone number. He's letting people, into his life and kind of giving them the way that they can kind of intrude on him instead of, just being left alone. It feels like he wants to be left alone, but I don't know. He does this stuff often in this era, and it's very perplexing.
Yeah, I think he's just trying to make a connection. Like they're a band that wants to make that connection with their fans, and I don't even think he maybe realized how many people were on the other end of that. Right. It's because you just can't even imagine. Like, there's 1 million people listening to you on the radio. Like, how do you even? You sold, like we said, you sold 1 million albums in 1 week. How do you even process that? Like, what does that even look like? Who are those people? Like, we're just a band. Like, we just connect with we play for people and we do our thing. And, like, you can't even imagine 1 million people, especially, 30 years ago before the internet. Like, now we're all connected and all. Like, and I'm not going to take this into that tangent, but it's just a different time. And he loves music and he wants to make that connection with the fans over the music. And I think it's a little bit, you can call it naive, you can call it whatever, but I just think he really likes making connections with people about music and didn't really realize how many people or how crazy it would get on the other end.
Yeah, I think they were behind while everybody was so quick to move forward on them and so quick to kind of anoint them to be the band of this era. They personally, like we were saying before, they weren't there yet. They wanted to gradually get there. And, they're used to, especially hometown, small clubs playing in front of 300 people at the off-ramp. They're not too far off from that. Almost 2 years before that, they were doing those shows consistently. And at those shows where you're playing in front of those kind of people and saying, hey, we're going to go here next, like, how many people are you going to get that follow? Not all 300. You're going to get maybe, if you're lucky, you get 20 people that follow, and great. It's not going to be that big of a deal because people will leave you alone. But at an event like this, feels like you might set yourself up for a little bit of issue, but we never heard anything from that. It's one of those things that he just.
And again, he's trying to give another Seattle band that's not in the spotlight, that's not going to get on MTV. He's trying to give them a shout out, and maybe he did go, maybe he didn't. Or he maybe went in the back and just hung out backstage with them, and like
that's probably the case.
Yeah, it's like maybe he, like that's the thing. We go back to Hype and like. there's so many bands like he's always felt that responsibility. Like now, talk about other bands. You've already talked about us,
Right?
Where people already know who we are. Let's go find some other cool bands. So yeah, I think that's part of it too. He's just trying to promote his friends and some just a band that he likes. He just wants people to go see him.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're on the mark with that for sure. Like to make the song appreciation for the week because we haven't covered Leash in a very long time.
That. Yeah.
And it's a 93 version of Leash, which is around where the time you want it the most, but you have to bring up a little bit. This is a very good version. I'm not going to undercut that at all, but, this was only played 21 times in 93 as opposed to the 53 that they played it in 92. They were sort of trying to transition off of that. Leash was not really in their favor, and it kind of was more of a 10 era song than it was a Versus era song.
Yep. It might have been, like I said, it might have been even the first song that they wrote after 10 was released, like the first bunch of that, new batch of songs.
Right.
And yeah, maybe they were a little burned out on, maybe they weren't feeling the energy of it. They're transitioning, you get one Vitalogy song here, you get a couple more Vitalogy songs the next night, and then you get into that spring 94 tour, and it's you're getting debuts of Vitalogy songs every night almost. And yeah, I think they were just kind of moving on from it. And like famously everybody knows 95 they just stopped playing it.
Yeah, and some of that has to do with Jack, and some of that has to do with the maturing process of the band.
Yep.
And saying like, okay, well that's a song that really kind of speaks to us and where we were at the time in kind of a more youthful stage. But in 95, you're like, okay, let's hit on Not For You, which is kind of a more definitive version of that. Let's hit on Last Exit, which is kind of speaking to how we're feeling at the time. They always wanted to be transparent with that, and that's why Leash and Rats and some of those other songs weren't really quite fitting in once they moved forward. But of course, when they got back to being a veteran band and being this like 20-year history kind of band, they can bring stuff like that back every now and again because they can get a little bit of the nostalgia factor back from it. So that's where you'll get every now and again you'll get a Leash thrown in, and I think they played Leash at the Safeco shows. So it's still a special song, and I think people hold it in very high regard because obviously
I'm raising my hand. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. There's a lot of people that hold up the signs, and you all know what the signs are. But yeah, I thought this was a great version. What'd you think of this?
Yeah, I mean, I just love that guitar intro. It gives me chills every time. It's such a cool way to start a song like this, and it's one of those, like, it's got that early kind of groove to it where the song kind of like moves and bobs up and down, and and we give Dave credit that this is a good Dave show. So he was on the ball on this.
Yeah. I agree, and it's a good version, but it didn't feel like, it felt like they needed to play one more song after this. It didn't feel like this was gonna be the set ender or should have been the set ender.
Right. Yeah. Leash is not. It's not in that showstopper category.
Right, and that's where like you kind of need to hold a song like Porch or Blood for this moment, and they used up that card early on, and I don't know if they did Leash at the other two shows at all, but that could have been that one moment for it, for sure. So yeah, they leave the stage, and that's another thing. Nobody ever mentioned that there was an encore too. So here we are. We're doing our detective work, and it's sort of quiet. There's no lights on. Nobody's jumping on stage, and it just, man, it's depressing. It taps into the identity of the song and what the song is and how it's supposed to feel, and maybe how Ed was feeling at the time and at a certain time. Like, it really taps into all of that. And he kind of, there's no playing off the crowd, singing along with them. It's just getting it in and getting it over with. But also, like, you think, going back to those showstoppers, most bands out there will end a set with their most intense song and kind of leave them all off happy. They do the opposite, and that's kind of always been their game.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to, and sometimes we talk about these ways that they book in these shows. We talked about at the beginning how Go kind of opens a certain type of song where you kind of know what you're going to be in for, and Indifference is the same way. Like, there are some sets, and like, Ledbetter had only been, debuted a month before this, and it wasn't quite there yet, so that wasn't quite what it was. But yeah, Indifference is like, it's maybe kind of like just a moody night, and like a night one where, yeah, like maybe things didn't go perfectly at the show like they'd hoped, and they've got 2 more nights, and I gotta even think this maybe wasn't even on a set list. It's just kind of like they go on after Leash, and it's like, yeah, I kind of feel an Indifference tonight. Let's just go. And it's just a spotlight, like you mentioned. The room is dark except for one little spotlight, and yeah, just really moody and vibey, and like not really what we're used to now. But I give me an early Indifference. I love it. I kind of, it's a welcome change from kind of like what we, this is not bread and butter. This is not the party atmosphere. This is kind of like, things are a little tense. Things are a little on edge. It's cool. I like these kind of shows.
Right. Ledbetter was not even in sets, let alone closing shows at the time. So this was pretty common occurrence to happen here. If it's not Indifference that's closing a set, I guess it's usually Porch at this point.
Right.
I don't even know what else could have closed a set. Maybe Rearview Mirror or something a couple times.
They were doing Blood. I think they were cool. Blood. Yeah,
that's a good one too. Yeah. But that's how you get it to finish off this one, and that's that show. And there's a lot going on there, but let's pick 3 moments that we think stand out from this one.
Yeah, so this is hard because a lot of the I'm gonna go. This is going off script a little bit. I'm gonna say, all of kind of the Ed trolling moments, like the Axl Rose and the most popular band in the world, and better than on MTV. That was kind of set the tone for this. So that's my number 3. It's just all of Ed's little trolling moments. My number 2 is Black. We talked about how great Jeff was in that. Great to hear in the little bit of We Belong Together. I'm on a big Black kick right now, so that's my number 2. And my number 1's Daughter. Like I talked about, the way it surged, I thought it was a really cool moment. The 2 really good tags that we don't usually get to talk about, Golden Years Across the Universe, thought it hit really well.
Yeah, Daughter's gonna be part of mine. I think Daughter is either 1 or 2 as well. I think that was definitely a highlight from this show. I'm going to go with the improv that they did, Don't Touch Me There. I thought that was very interesting, the way that it kind of all came about. And their improvs at the time, they kind of transition off the song as almost it's like a tag off of the song. And there's no break in between. They just kind of keep going, and they keep going into something. Almost like maybe the synergy on stage where they're feeling like, okay, let's not stop this. Maybe it's not on the set list, like let's just do something, but they're all on the same page, and that was nice to hear. So there's that. I would say everything up until Ed getting hit in the face in Porch was really, really good. And unfortunately, I don't want to make Porch a moment because it's just that's where things kind of all unraveled. But everything that happened before that was so good that it's hard to kind of not bring that up. So Yeah, I'll do that, and I guess everything else from Porch was at least notable, so I'll throw that in there, and then Daughter. Yeah, I thought Daughter was definitely a big highlight from this, with the same tags that you were talking about before, and you know, building to the song, and yeah, this is gonna be a weird one to rate. How are you going about it? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna rate it?
Yeah, I mean, you think that, you know, when you think of classic Pearl Jam shows, like this one doesn't really get talked about a lot. You know, the next night, the Vault Night is a big one, and obviously the last night is special for, you know, things we'll get into when we get to that one. But I'm gonna yeah, I can't put it low because it's like it's great to listen to. It's 1993. It's not a bad show. I'm gonna give it 7.5. I'm gonna kind of stick to I'm gonna kind of ride both edges of the rail there. I'm gonna go 7.5.
I'm on the fence with this, man. You know, 7 is usually my bar. If you can pass 7, then it was enjoyable, and it was enjoyable for me up until the point where everything just kind of felt like it unraveled. And again, like I said before, I could be kind of in my own on my own island on that. It could just be me, but it felt, I don't know, that whole stuff just didn't sit well with me. And it wasn't even a big deal. It was just a guy running on stage and, you know, doing a backflip into the crowd, and it's not a big deal. It's just that the reaction to it and how they played off of it and what came afterwards just did not correlate to what they were doing earlier. And it felt like that was an immediate reaction to what had happened. So from that aspect, that took me a little bit out of the show. I didn't like that I got hit in the face. I thought I just don't like when things get thrown on stage at all. I'm just very much against that. I think it's under 7. I think it's a 6.5. And I say that just because you know, how it made me feel personally. You know, I don't think I'm going to go back to this anytime soon, although I've enjoyed a lot of the performance from earlier in the set. I don't think it hits that same stratosphere that most of these 93 shows seem to come upon. And again, maybe I'm overthinking it, but it didn't sit well with me.
That's fair. You have your own reaction to it.
Yeah, and look, that's not the first time that shit like that has happened on a Pearl Jam song, but just their reaction to that and me playing off the reaction, that's just how I'm taking it. So, all right, so, you know, that was another in the Hometown Seattle series that we're doing. It'll be continuing all year, I believe. In the next month, we mentioned the More Theater show. I believe that's the next one on the docket for that. And there are actually 2. We're going to be doing both, and we'll let you know how we're going to be doing that when we get to that. But we're not getting to that just yet. Next week, we are going to get to a state we haven't done yet, and that is Hawaii. And their history in Hawaii is very interesting, obviously, because they now have a band member that is from Hawaii, and Ed has a good relationship with, you know, the state and has residents down there. But they have a very interesting history with the area too. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit. And we're going to do the 2006 show, which is a great show, very popular. And we can't do a show like that without our good friend Matt Helbig, who is going to come back and help us cover that show. We're very excited to have him back as always. You know, he's an OG for this show, so anytime he can come back and contribute is always a good time. And this one, we were going to do this a while ago, and it was kind of going to be billed as a John versus Matt battle royale, but I don't think we're quite there on this one.
Well, yeah, it's going to be interesting because the last time Matt was on, we did Wrigley Night 2, 2016,
Yeah.
and that's an all-timer. Like I think we agreed too much on that episode for my liking. So I think this time it might get a little contentious.
Well, there's a lot of Matt favorites at the show. There's obviously Big Wave, Crazy Mary, which he's a big fan of, and then there's the other side of the equation where there's a lot of Matt just cringeworthy moments like Last Kiss, and I can't remember the full set list off the top of my head right now, but I know there's a lot of things that are going to be contentious. Maybe I'll sit back and be a referee for this one, but it should be entertaining nonetheless.
We're gonna have some fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So stay tuned to that. As always, if you aren't subscribed to the show on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you subscribe to your podcast, subscribe. And definitely get the updates for this. We're on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Pearl Jam Podcast Community Group. Send a request to get in the group, and we will accept you and get in on all the conversations we've been doing. March has been Album of the Day Challenge, and that's been interesting going back and listening to a bunch of album requests that a lot of listeners have put in, and we've been having a lot of fun with that. So, just kind of getting in on what we're doing in this community. Twitter, and on Discord as well. So a lot of things going on. Clubhouse too. Like we've just been doing a whole lot of shit lately. So if you're interested, get in on that. We'd be happy to have you in, and obviously over on Patreon as well. And I got nothing else to say, so this is how we're going to end it. Like we usually do. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, I miss you already. I miss you always. Another one from the Seattle series is in the books, and we'll be back next week down in Hawaii, 2006. See you then.
The most popular band in the world.
Take care. Good night. Thanks. Good night.